Despite the loss to the New York Rangers, the St. Louis Blues did play much better hockey last night. And most importantly, Logan Mayhew looked good on the ice. Let's talk about it.
Hey, this is Brayden Chen.
Subscribe to Lock On Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to be talking to you about the fact that I believe the Blues did play much better hockey last night despite the loss to the Rangers. And most importantly, Logan Mayhew looked like a completely different player from when we last saw him. There is an update with Lucic that we're going to talk about. And then the final game of this metropolitan, well, mostly metropolitan, there's one Atlantic team road trip that the Blues had. It was a 10-day road trip, okay? It comes to an end tomorrow, and then the guys go back to St. Louis to celebrate Thanksgiving with their families. We have a lot to get to on today's episode of Locked On Blues, but I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I hope everybody is having a happy Tuesday, November 25th. And we're about to approach Thanksgiving. And I know for some of us, we're not really thankful with how this team has been doing. But I am thankful that I saw improvement from Logan Mayhew last night. Now, that is a transition, by the way, my friends. You see, I was really optimistic about Logan Mayhew, right? He played, a handful of games. They sent him down, and I didn't think he had enough time in Springfield playing only 5 games. But at the end of the day, I understand that the Blues, they want to see the most out of him because they did trade for him. It's not like he was just a player that they drafted in the 6th round. No, this is somebody that they traded a very good player for in Zachary Bolduc. So I understand kind of like not the pressure in a sense, but I do understand why there was a desire to, call him up and see how he looks. And he looks like a confident skater again. When he was playing in the first stint of games, he didn't necessarily look confident. Now he looks confident on the ice. And I think that sometimes you need to be sent down to just relearn the basics and just relearn your own game. I think it's really easy for us to judge players based off of the negativity that they produce rather than the positivity that we can see. And watching some games of the T-Birds, because yes, we all know I'm an avid AHL fan, I did think he looked good, but the only thing I will say about that is he's always looked good in the AHL. Like, he's never had a stint where I thought, oh, well, he's playing poor hockey. He's always exceeded in the AHL. That is why, for me, I wanted him just to spend a little bit more time with the T-Birds. But at the end of the day, this is a Blues team that isn't very good right now. This is a Blues team that obviously has been struggling. I know they picked up the win against the Islanders, but still, nonetheless, this is not a very good hockey team. And I think it's coming to the point where you have to just give these younger players a chance and let them play. Because this team, in my opinion, I know it's November 25th and it seems a little bit early to say this. I don't see this being a playoff team. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say I think they're going to have an astonishing comeback. I don't see that happening. But for a player like Logan Mayhew, again, who struggled off the bat, it is really good to see him looking like the player everyone said that he had the potential to be. Now, is he 100% there? Absolutely not. And that's going to take time, right? You're not going to become that overnight. But what I can say, though, against the Rangers, and this is what I was really happy for him. He did play 13 minutes, almost 14 minutes of total ice time, right? And yes, he was -2, right? I know, not great. but he just looked overall better. Sometimes stats can lie to you and they make a player seem like a lot worse than they are, but he just looked more confident. He looked better overall. So while yes, you might look at the statistics and say, "Oh, well, Hale, he didn't play that good of hockey." I still think there is improvement, absolutely. But he did play much better hockey than we're used to seeing from him. And two things can be true. So again, good for Logan Mayu. Again, taking this opportunity, getting called up again. He doesn't want to be sent down. And he stated that. He knows that this is where he wants to be. So maybe this is going to be some extra motivation for him just to continue to play the game that he loves at the level that he wants to play at. Because at the end of the day, it's every hockey player's dream to be playing in the NHL. So, again, happy for Logan, but the Blues, yes, they still lost to the Rangers. And you might be like, Hale, are we back to losing again? And to tell you the truth, I don't think this loss was as bad as maybe we made it seem. Because at the end of the day, right, Dylan Holloway scored. And what I want to say about that is we haven't really seen much from Holloway, but I'm glad that, he scored Broberg with the assist. And for me, that was a kind of like a bit of confidence, right, in a player that I feel like has been off this season. So that was good to see. And then Schenner got a goal with like 18 minutes passed by in the third. So it was about like under 2 minutes of hockey. Um, what I will say is this, though. The Rangers, they're kind of an odd team, to tell you the truth. It didn't necessarily seem to me that the Rangers were going to be one of these teams that was going to like they're just like a team that's very mid, right? So for me, I wasn't expecting much. It's always the Blues versus the Blues. That's how I look at it. It's not necessarily like, oh, it's the Blues versus the Rangers. It's always the Blues versus the Blues. I know for Hofer, he hasn't been seeing a lot of wins. Only 2 wins for him this entire season, which I can imagine is very frustrating as he was very frustrated after the loss against Philadelphia. But for a player like Hofer, who started off the season so poorly, he really has come a long way, just in the sense that he looks like he's getting the groove back together. And I do understand how frustrating it is and how it can be. And again, I am not denying that whatsoever. I think at the end of the day, this is still a team within the Blues that have a lot of fundamental issues to work on. Hoof did make 17 saves, and that's something that he should, be proud of. He wasn't in the net a lot in Philadelphia. That to me was concerning. I thought he should have spent a lot more time in the net. But again, he's adjusting, so it is what it is. Coach spoke after the game and said, I didn't think we played with the intensity that and puck support that we should have been playing in the past 3 games. So again, I think when it's interesting he says intensity. It did feel like a slower paced game. But again, I want to remind you that this is a 10-game road trip. So this is quite a lot. So I do understand that there is a sense of, okay, wow, there is an urgency in a sense for these players to produce at the highest level on the road, which is not easy to do. So I do understand, but I do think at the same time that there is a task at hand, and the task at hand might be something that this team just can't do at the moment. And it's very interesting, right? Because again, I believe that there is a lot of talented players, and I just want to see more. That is all. I want to see more. And I know that they have it within them, right? I do. And I feel like it's coming. But they have a game against the New Jersey Devils coming up tomorrow. And I don't know if this is the game where we're going to truly see it. But before we talk about the Devils, I need to talk to you about some news that just broke. This is why I like to do my podcasts at night, so we can kind of recap all that went on during the day. And it has to do with Lucic. So before we get into that, because there is an update, believe it or not, my friends, I want to talk to you about my friends over at FanDuel. I said up friends like a lot of times in a row. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to fanduel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So I'm on my phone, right? Just kind of scrolling on TikTok, if I'm being honest with you. And I get a notification. I have Chris Johnston's tweet notifications on because, again, he is one of the great reporters and he always has like everything NHL. It's not just one team, it's everything. So I'm like, okay. And I see the name Lucic pop up. And I'm like, oh, what happened here? Because I thought, he was with Springfield and, he was going to be, having a pro tryout. Well, the St. Louis Blues terminate AHL pro tryout for Lucic. So this is the statement that was sent. And you know what? I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to read you the statement that was sent to me on email by the team themselves. That way we know for sure that this is the most up-to-date information. St. Louis Blues president of hockey operations and general manager Doug Armstrong announced today the Blues have terminated the AHL professional tryout PTO for forward Milan Lucic. Lucic, 37, was originally signed by the Blues to a PTO prior to the 2025 training camp. This 6'3", 240-pound forward appeared in 4 preseason games, posting a goal and an assist before being sidelined with a lower body injury. Upon recovery, Lucic joined the Blues' AHL affiliate, the Springfield Thunderbirds, and logged 1 assist and 4 penalty minutes in 5 games. Overall, the Vancouver, British Columbia native has dressed in about, they give you stats, almost like 1,200 NHL games, putting up 586 points, 233 goals, and 353 assists, and about 1,300 penalty minutes. So, wow, what a turn of events, how the tables have turned. I mean, you have to wonder what exactly happened here, right? Because again, I know he wasn't really producing in those handful of games, but to me, it just seemed a little bit weird in timing. And it was something that I wasn't expecting to happen today. It's just, I mean, I get that he was released and I get that these things happen, but somebody put out a really funny tweet and said, I guess the Blues are not desperate enough for Lucic. This is a hilarious concept. And it's just funny to me because in a sense, right, he could have been somebody that could have brought maybe some enforcing kind of, but I believe the Blues already have that. So for me, I was like, okay, well, you have Nathan Walker. He's like 5'9", but hey, he stands up for the guys. I don't know. This was a very interesting development. And I guess maybe they just didn't like what he saw. And that's all it came down to. And it could be something as easy as that. He had 5 games. Maybe they're like, you know what? He's not doing the job that we needed him to do. I don't understand what went wrong, right? I think that was a very short amount of games to assess a player. I do. But at the same time, I could be wrong and it could be maybe he was unhappy. I don't know what exactly happened. Do I think that he is going to be somebody that stays in the NHL or AHL? And I don't think so. I think that maybe retirement would be the better option. I mean, there's always like the KHL, but, and I don't mean that in a snarky way, but I don't know if he necessarily has a role in the NHL, considering that the Blues are one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League and they ended up releasing him. Maybe makes me think that his time is up. And again, he had a very impressive career, right, with Boston. Not even with Boston. Like, that's actually the least of it. But I don't know why I said Boston. I was like, Boston. He didn't play that much with Boston. But I think overall, he did have a good NHL career. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. I mean, he was with the Flames, he was with the Oilers, I mean, the Bruins. And I know that he was drafted by the Bruins, but like still, he was around different teams. And I think that's something to be very proud of, and he should feel very accomplished. And you know why I said Boston? Because I knew that he spent a lot of time with Boston, and he was traded. Okay, but the point that I was trying to make initially was, okay, I'm not like a Lucic expert by any means, but I think at the end of the day, they just didn't like what they saw, and he maybe didn't want to spend time in the AHL. And I can't even imagine, right? I mean, for some of these NHL players who spend, years and years and years in the NHL and then you're sent down to the AHL, I can't imagine how that feels. There must be some ego that goes with it. I'm not sure, right? But again, it didn't work out and the decision had to be made. So, in the stint of only a few days, goodbye to Texier and goodbye to Lucic. Like, this is where the Blues are at right now, which is why it is kind of indicating to me that this team is going to sell at the trade deadline because clearly they're not having any issues saying goodbye to players. They're not. They're not begging anybody to stay. They're just like, you know what? It's not working out. Terminate. And I kind of like that mentality. Like, for me, this is a mentality that is going to benefit the team in the long run because then maybe you can actually try to trade for good NHL ready players, specifically defensemen, that can make a difference to this team. I think that the Blues are in a situation right now where it's kind of like a lose lose situation because if they end up playing really well, they still might miss out on the playoffs. And there's that. But if the Blues don't continue to play well, they're going to lose everybody. And by everybody, I mean like all of us who are upset over the fact that this team hasn't been playing good hockey. But they could get a really good draft pick. So, I mean, it's like, what would you rather have? A team that turns things around and potentially makes it to the playoffs? Or would you rather have a team that kind of just like tanks it? And I'm not saying like to purposefully tank. You can tank in a way where, like, when you think about teams that have tanked and they get rid, like the Bruins last year when they just got rid of everybody, like those are ways that you can tank when you have mostly an AHL roster playing in the NHL. So there's a lot of options for the Blues to, do something at least productive this season. I like that word, productive. That's how I'm going to look at this team. All right, I'm going to finally talk to you about how there is a final game tomorrow night on this road trip, and it is in the state of New Jersey. I was actually talking to a couple people that do stuff with the Blues media personality, like Jamie Rivers, and we were laughing because the Flyers practice facilities in New Jersey. And he was like, wow, like Jersey's so big. And I'm like, yeah, like it's small, but it's bigger than I think like people realize. So it was a funny conversation. Before I talk to you about that game versus the Devils, I do want to talk to you about my friends over at Gametime. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real. Getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in. The app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress free. I love using Game Time because it is so convenient for me not only to select the seats that I want, but to see exactly what I will be seeing from those seats itself. They also have zone deals, and they're a game changer. If you pick the section, Game Time picks your seats and you save big. Plus, you can even find NHL tickets for under $25. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. That's locked on, LOCKED, NHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. The Blues are reaching their final game of the road trip tomorrow against the New Jersey Devils. And then the Blues finally head back to St. Louis. It feels like it's been forever since the Blues have been back home. But luckily, they do return home for a 3 o'clock puck drop against the Senators on Black Friday. So a little bit of a matinee hockey game going on for all of you. And for the Blues, they get to at least spend Thanksgiving back home, which is really nice considering the fact that at the end of the day, they were on the road for such a long time. But again, you have Blues Devils. And this is going to be another 6 o'clock puck drop. I know these puck drops have been so early for the Blues. And the Devils, I can tell you this, they're a team that has been struggling without Jack Hughes, okay? Like, this is a team that was one of the hottest teams in the NHL, and they have just been a complete mess since Jack Hughes. Now, they did beat the Detroit Red Wings yesterday 4-3, but they did fall to the Philadelphia Flyers 6-3. So they are a team that is still, in my opinion, a better hockey team than the Blues, but definitely a team where you can see that they're having some weaknesses right now in the lineup just due to the fact that they do not have Jack Hughes. And that to me is very interesting, just considering all things. After the Flyers Devils game, I went to the Devils locker room, right? And Timo Meyer, he kind of summed it up that this team right now, they just have to figure out what's going on. But he did indicate that there has been some frustration since, Jack Hughes hasn't been able to play. So you have to wonder if you're the Blues, right? You're able to go to OT with Philadelphia last week. Okay, I can't even say you had a 4-goal lead on the Detroit Red Wings like that, and then they blew it. So we're not going to mention that. Actually, that's a bad comparison. Well, most recently they played Philadelphia. Okay, a couple of games ago, and so did the Blues. So you were able to go to OT against Philly. The Devils lost in regulation to Philly. So maybe if you're the Blues, the way that you approach this game is like, okay, you know what? A team that recently beat the Devils, we were able to go to extra minutes with them. And maybe that can give the guys some more confidence. I don't know necessarily what's going to help this team right now, just because, and I'm actually serious when I mean this. All jokes aside, this is not a good hockey team. And I think that this is a team individually that has players that have been stepping up, like Braden Shen, I believe, has been stepping up. I just find it hard against the Devils. And I like Jake Allen, right? We know Jake Allen here in St. Louis. He's the reason why Binner was able to get the Blues to the cup. Shout out Jake Allen. But he looked awful against Philadelphia. And I'm afraid that they're going to have him in net against the Blues just because, again, the Blues aren't considered to be a good team this year. And I feel like they might have him in net. So that would be a wild thing to do. I do suspect that Jordan Binnington will be in net, so it would be kind of funny to see Jake on one side of the ice and then Binner on the other side. But that's what I'm suspecting. I'm not really expecting line changes from yesterday's contest. I did like the fact that you do have, Ruzi and Holloway again on the same line. I think that's actually very beneficial. But this is a team that I just feel like they need consistency. When you're always switching lines and pairs, of course, you're going to be mixing things up a little bit too much to where you're not going to be able to find that base of consistency. So I would like that to remain the same. I thought actually Fowler and Mayu looked really good on the third pair together. I like that. And I also just thought that Logan Mayu played a good game. So I'll give him credit to where credit's due. New Jersey, though, a really interesting team, as I mentioned. They have a lot of young players, okay? And I feel like they're always a team that a lot of people have high expectations for, but they don't meet. And it's unfortunate for them because I feel like if they still had Jack Hughes, they would still be one of the hottest teams in the NHL. But clearly, they don't have Jack right now. So it is also, to me, kind of humorous when one player is out to see how the team can kind of crumble at times. And the only reason why I say that is I believe in this day in the NHL, you don't necessarily need a star player to be a good hockey team. It does help, obviously. But when said player is out, it can totally change the dynamic of the team. And you see that a lot with different teams. Like imagine if like a McDavid was out, right? At the end of the day, you can't always depend on one player. And with the Blues, I mean, I know that we look at Robert Thomas as our guy. And when he was out, yeah, things weren't so great, but the team was still afloat. I mean, they were still playing much better hockey than they did then than they are now. So like that's a fact. But it just makes you kind of think when a team doesn't have that one guy, how the dynamics can change. So I am actually very curious to see how the Blues perform tomorrow against the New Jersey Devils. Again, a 6:00 puck drop. We're going to talk more about that game tomorrow, and also I'll be talking to a reporter that covers Slovakia hockey and had a really interesting conversation with Dvorsky. So we'll get to that tomorrow. Make sure to like, subscribe, and wherever you're listening to give a like, a thumbs up, whatever you can do to stay in on the conversation. And we will talk tomorrow. Like always, let's go Blues.